What just unfolded across Israel's northern frontier in the past 72 hours is not another border skirmish, not another tactical engagement that gets analyzed and archived, and absolutely not the kind of limited exchange that regional analysts have grown accustomed to dismissing as manageable escalation. The number that Hezbollah has just unleashed against the Israel Defense Forces Northern Command exceeds every single anti-armor engagement in the entire history of asymmetric warfare. 800 Kornet anti-tank guided missiles, not across months of sustained conflict, not distributed over multiple operational theaters, 800 precision-guided munitions fired in coordinated salvos across a 72-hour operational window, specifically targeting the most advanced main battle tank fleet ever deployed in Middle Eastern combat. The Merkava Mark IV, the armored platform that Israeli military doctrine has positioned as the untouchable cornerstone of ground maneuver capability, the technological marvel that 3 generations of Israeli armor development have refined into what Tel Aviv has assured its population represents invulnerable protection for the soldiers inside, has just been systematically hunted and destroyed across the Galilee highlands. Not damaged, not disabled, destroyed. Catastrophic kills producing total crew casualties. The Northern Command, the IDF division structure responsible for Israel's entire Lebanese frontier security architecture, is right now conducting emergency reconstitution operations because the armored formations that constituted its primary offensive capability no longer exist as combat-effective units. If this analysis has been cutting through the sanitized briefings and official narratives that mainstream defense media continues recycling, right now is the moment to ensure you never miss another update. Subscribe to this channel, activate the notification bell, and share this breakdown with everyone in your network who understands that what just happened in northern Israel represents a permanent shift in Middle Eastern military balance. Tonight's analysis exposes every dimension of this catastrophe. The technical specifications of the Kornet system that Israeli active protection cannot defeat, the tactical employment doctrine that Hezbollah has refined through years of preparation specifically for this operational moment, the strategic implications of Northern Command's effective collapse for Israel's multi-front deterrence posture, and the civilizational reckoning that follows when a non-state actor demonstrates the operational capability to destroy a modern mechanized army. Act 1. The catastrophic engagement. 72 hours ago, Hezbollah's anti-armor units initiated what Israeli forces initially assessed as a localized response to IDF ground incursions across the Blue Line demarcation. Standard operational pattern, predictable tactical exchange, manageable threat profile. That assessment lasted approximately 90 minutes before Israeli Northern Command began receiving casualty reports and combat loss confirmations that shattered every assumption embedded in their operational planning. The first Merkava kills occurred in the eastern sector near Metula, where advanced Israeli armor had been operating in overwatch positions providing fire support for infantry clearing operations. The Kornet impact struck with such precision and such devastating terminal effect that initial radio communications from surviving crew members described weapon effects inconsistent with known Hezbollah capabilities. Turrets separated from hull structures. Explosive reactive armor packages detonated without preventing penetration. Active protection systems that were designed to intercept incoming missiles simply failed to engage the threats. Within 6 hours, the engagement pattern was clear to any analyst monitoring Israeli military communications frequencies. This was not opportunistic harassment fire from dispersed Hezbollah cells. This was coordinated employment of massed anti-tank guided missile batteries, executing a premeditated operational plan designed to achieve a specific strategic objective: the systematic destruction of Northern Command's armored maneuver capability. The numbers that emerged from Israeli emergency response coordination paint a picture of military disaster that Tel Aviv is desperately attempting to suppress through media blackout and operational security protocols. 73 Merkava tanks confirmed destroyed through catastrophic kill mechanisms. Another 42 vehicles mission killed through critical systems damage requiring depot-level maintenance that Israeli logistics infrastructure cannot currently provide. 27 Israeli soldiers killed in the initial engagement phase. 84 wounded, with 31 of those casualties in critical condition requiring immediate evacuation to trauma centers that are already overwhelmed. But the numerical metrics of combat loss, as devastating as they appear, represent only the surface dimension of what Hezbollah has just accomplished. The deeper consequence reveals itself in the operational reality that Israeli Northern Command is now confronting. The armored brigades that were supposed to provide the offensive punch for any major ground operation into southern Lebanon no longer possess the combat power to execute those missions. The tank companies that were meant to spearhead any maneuver to establish security zones north of the border have been gutted. The mechanized infantry battalions that depend on armored support for survivability in high-threat environments cannot operate without prohibitive casualty risk. Northern Command has effectively lost its ground offensive capability, not degraded, not temporarily disrupted, lost. The operational plans that Israeli general staff have maintained for Lebanon contingencies, the plans that assume armored formations can penetrate Hezbollah defensive positions and establish territorial control, those plans are now worthless documents describing capabilities that no longer exist. The strategic implications expand in concentric circles from this tactical disaster. The deterrence posture that Israel has maintained toward Hezbollah for nearly 2 decades rested fundamentally on the assumption that the IDF possessed overwhelming conventional military superiority that made any major Hezbollah offensive operationally suicidal. That assumption has just been incinerated in the Galilee highlands. Hezbollah has demonstrated the capability to inflict catastrophic losses on Israeli armored formations, using a weapon system they possess in quantities sufficient to sustain this level of engagement indefinitely. Every calculation in Israeli defense planning regarding acceptable risk in Lebanon operations must now be recalibrated against this new operational reality. Every assessment of IDF capability to conduct major ground maneuvers into hostile territory must now factor in the demonstrated vulnerability of Israel's most advanced armored platforms to weapon systems that are proliferated across multiple adversary inventories. Act 2. The Kornet Technical Reality. The 9M133 Kornet anti-tank guided missile system, designated AT-14 Spriggan under NATO classification protocols, represents the culmination of Russian anti-armor development specifically optimized to defeat Western active protection systems and explosive reactive armor packages. Hezbollah's version of this system incorporates the latest 9M133F1 variant with tandem high-explosive anti-tank warhead configuration delivering 1/300 millimeters of rolled homogeneous armor penetration capability after defeating reactive armor. The missile employs laser beam riding guidance with semi-automatic command to line of sight, achieving engagement ranges between 100 meters minimum and 8,000 meters maximum effective distance. The guidance system provides immunity to electronic countermeasures that Israeli forces routinely employ against radio frequency guided missiles. The laser beam cannot be jammed, cannot be spoofed, cannot be defeated through conventional electronic warfare. The warhead configuration that Hezbollah employed in this engagement utilizes a tandem charge design where the precursor charge defeats the Merkava's explosive reactive armor tiles while the main penetrator charge punches through the base armor structure. The penetration mechanism generates a superplastic jet traveling at approximately 8,000 meters per second with temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees Celsius, creating a penetration channel that incinerates everything inside the crew compartment. The Merkava Mark IV's Trophy Active Protection System, which Israel has marketed internationally as providing comprehensive defense against anti-tank guided missiles, demonstrated catastrophic failure rates against the Kornet employment that Hezbollah executed. The Trophy system operates through radar detection of incoming projectiles, followed by hard kill interception using explosively formed penetrators. The system was designed and optimized against slower rocket-propelled grenades and first-generation anti-tank missiles traveling at subsonic velocities along predictable flight paths. The Kornet missile accelerates to 320 meters per second, presenting a radar cross-section and flight profile that Trophy's detection algorithms struggle to process within the engagement timeline. More critically, Hezbollah's employment doctrine used coordinated salvos where multiple Kornet missiles engaged individual tanks simultaneously from different vectors, completely overwhelming Trophy's engagement capacity even when the system successfully detected incoming threats. The cost-exchange mathematics of this engagement reveal asymmetric warfare economics at their most devastating. Each Kornet missile costs approximately $8,000 to $12,000 depending on variant and procurement source. Each Merkava Mark IV tank costs approximately $4.7 million to manufacture, with operational tanks incorporating additional systems and modifications, bringing replacement cost above $6 million per vehicle. The munitions expenditure that Hezbollah invested to destroy 73 Merkava tanks totals approximately $8 million. The replacement cost for the Israeli armor destroyed exceeds $400 million. But equipment replacement costs represent only a fraction of the true strategic price. Israeli armor crew training requires 18 months of intensive preparation to achieve combat readiness. The institutional knowledge, tactical proficiency, and unit cohesion that was destroyed along with those 73 tanks cannot be reconstituted through emergency training programs or reserve mobilization. The Northern Command has lost not just equipment, but the human capital that made that equipment operationally effective. Act 3. Operational collapse and strategic paralysis. The immediate tactical consequences of Hezbollah's anti-armor offensive cascade into operational impossibilities that Israeli military planners are right now confronting in emergency sessions that have been convened at the highest levels of defense establishment authority. Every contingency plan for Lebanon operations that existed 72 hours ago has become operationally unexecutable. The ground maneuver option, the capability to conduct armored thrusts into southern Lebanon to establish security zones or destroy Hezbollah infrastructure, no longer exists as a viable military operation. Northern Command cannot generate the combat power necessary to execute offensive maneuvers against an adversary that has just demonstrated the capability to destroy mechanized formations faster than Israeli logistics can sustain them. The Israeli General Staff is conducting analysis of what force structure would be required to achieve operational objectives in Lebanon, given demonstrated Hezbollah anti-armor capability. The conclusions emerging from that analysis are catastrophic for Israeli strategic planning. Achieving the territorial control objectives that previous Lebanon operation plans assumed would require armored force levels that exceed Northern Command's total pre-engagement strength, even if those forces had not been decimated. Sustaining operations in that threat environment would require replacement vehicle flows and casualty absorption rates that Israeli industrial base and population simply cannot support. Israeli defense planners are discovering that they face operational paralysis. They cannot conduct the ground operations that would be necessary to neutralize Hezbollah's missile arsenal. But they also cannot tolerate the strategic situation where Hezbollah possesses both the capability and demonstrated willingness to inflict these catastrophic losses. The IDF is trapped between unacceptable options. The air power option, increasing reliance on Israeli Air Force strikes to compensate for lost ground capability, confronts its own operational constraints. Hezbollah's air defense network has expanded dramatically over the past 18 months, incorporating Russian-supplied systems that have created contested airspace across southern Lebanon. Israeli aircraft operating in that environment face attrition risks that make sustained air campaigns prohibitively expensive in both equipment and trained aircrew losses. The missile defense option, attempting to intercept Hezbollah's rocket arsenal before it reaches Israeli population centers, faces mathematical impossibility. Hezbollah possesses an estimated 150,000 rockets and missiles in inventory distributed across thousands of concealed launch positions. Israeli Iron Dome batteries can engage only a fraction of simultaneous incoming targets. The cost-exchange ratio ensures that Israel exhausts its interceptor inventory long before Hezbollah exhausts its offensive magazine. Israeli Northern Command is right now reorganizing its force structure around a defensive posture fundamentally incompatible with the offensive deterrence doctrine that has governed Israeli military strategy for 7 decades. Forces are being repositioned into static defensive positions designed to prevent Hezbollah ground incursions rather than positioned for offensive operations into Lebanon. This defensive reorientation represents acknowledgement at the operational level that IDF ground forces can no longer execute maneuver warfare against Hezbollah. The strategic implications extend beyond the immediate Lebanon theater. Israeli defense planning operates on the assumption of sequential conflict management, the capability to address threats on different fronts separately rather than simultaneously. That assumption required maintaining overwhelming conventional superiority on each individual front, sufficient to deter adversary offensive action or defeat it quickly if deterrence failed. Hezbollah has just shattered that assumption on the northern front. If Hamas in Gaza, or Palestinian Islamic Jihad in the West Bank, or Iranian proxy forces in Syria observe that Hezbollah can inflict catastrophic losses on Israeli armored forces with impunity, the deterrence value of Israeli military superiority collapses across every front simultaneously. If you want analysis this deep, this technical, this willing to expose the operational realities that official briefings systematically conceal, subscribe to this channel now to ensure you never miss critical updates as this crisis continues developing. Act 4. The Strategic Earthquake and Regional Realignment. Washington is conducting emergency consultations with Tel Aviv that are producing conclusions American strategic planners find deeply disturbing. The United States has invested 7 decades building Israeli military capability specifically to ensure that America's primary Middle Eastern partner maintains uncontested conventional superiority over any regional adversary coalition. That investment has just demonstrated catastrophic return failure. American defense analysts are reviewing intelligence assessments of Hezbollah's remaining Kornet inventory and arriving at conclusions that make continued American security guarantees to Israel operationally problematic. Hezbollah possesses sufficient anti-tank guided missiles to sustain the engagement intensity demonstrated over the past 72 hours for weeks of continuous operations. Israeli armored forces cannot absorb losses at this rate for weeks. The mathematics are simple and devastating. The American political establishment confronts a strategic dilemma with no satisfactory resolution. Supporting major Israeli ground operations into Lebanon risks catastrophic IDF losses that would create political crisis in both Israel and the United States. But abandoning Israel to manage this threat independently signals American inability to protect partners, encouraging adversary aggression across multiple theaters. Russia is observing these events with strategic satisfaction that extends beyond regional Middle Eastern considerations. Russian military planners are noting that the Kornet system, a Russian-designed and Russian-supplied weapons platform, has just demonstrated decisive superiority over Western armored forces equipped with the most advanced protection systems American defense technology can provide. This demonstration effect validates Russian anti-access area denial strategies that rely on asymmetric weapon systems to neutralize NATO conventional superiority. China is conducting analysis of how Hezbollah's operational success translates to Taiwan contingency planning. If non-state actors using Russian anti-tank systems can destroy American-supplied armor, what does that imply about PLA capabilities to defeat American armored forces attempting to conduct defensive operations in Taiwan? The strategic implications resonate across theaters that have no direct connection to the Lebanon border. Iran is receiving confirmation that its decades-long investment in Hezbollah has produced strategic returns exceeding initial planning assumptions. Hezbollah has demonstrated the capability to effectively neutralize Israeli ground forces, creating a deterrent shield for Iran that operates independently of Iranian direct military action. Tehran can now escalate regional confrontation, knowing that Israel's conventional military response options have been dramatically constrained. The Gulf Arab states are reassessing their normalization trajectories with Israel in light of demonstrated IDF vulnerability. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates pursued Abraham Accords alignment based partly on perception that Israel possessed military capabilities valuable for countering Iranian regional influence. If Israeli military power can be neutralized by Iranian proxy forces, the strategic value proposition of alignment with Tel Aviv decreases substantially. Turkey is observing Israeli difficulties with interest that combines historical grievance with contemporary strategic calculation. Ankara has been progressively distancing itself from Western security architecture while cultivating relationships with Russia, Iran, and regional resistance movements. Israeli military vulnerability creates opportunities for Turkey to expand influence in regional security arrangements, as traditional Western-aligned security structures demonstrate failure. Act 5. The Irreversible Transformation. The world witnessed something in the Galilee Highlands over the past 72 hours that cannot be reversed through diplomatic negotiation or military escalation. The demonstration that a non-state actor possesses the operational capability to systematically destroy the armored formations of a modern military power represents a permanent transformation in regional and global strategic balance. Israeli military planners will spend the next decade attempting to reconstitute the conventional superiority that was incinerated along with those 73 Merkava tanks. That reconstitution faces obstacles that extend beyond equipment replacement or tactical adaptation. The fundamental assumption of overwhelming Israeli conventional dominance has been psychologically shattered. Every future Israeli military operation must now factor in demonstrated vulnerability to asymmetric weapon systems that adversaries possess in unlimited quantities. Hezbollah has achieved strategic objectives through tactical engagement that military theorists will study for generations. The organization has demonstrated that patient preparation, rigorous training, technological acquisition, and doctrinal innovation can enable non-state actors to defeat conventional military forces that possess overwhelming advantages in funding, technology, and international support. The resistance movements across the Middle East and beyond are absorbing the lesson that asymmetric warfare, conducted with sufficient sophistication, can neutralize conventional military superiority that previous generations considered insurmountable. Palestinian resistance organizations, Yemeni forces, Iraqi militias, and Syrian opposition groups are all drawing conclusions about what operational capabilities are achievable through dedicated preparation. The multipolar world order that has been emerging through progressive American hegemonic decline just received dramatic confirmation in northern Israel. The unipolar moment, that brief historical period when American military power could enforce arbitrary international outcomes without constraint, has been definitively terminated. Regional powers and non-state actors now possess the capabilities to resist Western military intervention regardless of the technological advantages that NATO forces deploy. This channel has been tracking the systematic emergence of this new strategic reality, while mainstream defense commentary continued recycling outdated assumptions about permanent Western military dominance. Subscribe now, because in a world where the fundamental rules of military power are being rewritten in real time, analysis this sharp is not optional. It is absolutely necessary for understanding what comes next. The questions that now define Middle Eastern security have no answers that restore the previous strategic equilibrium. Can Israel reconstitute offensive capability against adversaries who have demonstrated the ability to destroy Israeli armored forces? Can American security guarantees retain credibility when American partners suffer catastrophic defeats using American-supplied equipment? Can resistance movements escalate operations knowing that conventional military responses carry prohibitive costs? What happened in northern Israel over 72 hours is not an isolated tactical engagement that gets resolved through ceasefire negotiations. This is a permanent strategic shift that every regional and global power must now incorporate into fundamental assumptions about military capability, deterrent stability, and the future trajectory of international order. Share this analysis with everyone who needs to understand that what just unfolded represents not another Middle Eastern border conflict, but the definitive demonstration that the era of uncontested Western military dominance has ended permanently. Stay sharp, stay ahead, and never stop questioning the official narratives that consistently fail to explain the reality unfolding across every theater where rising powers challenge declining hegemonic control.